Don's going to start us off tonight. Don is Don is with Natural Habitat, and it is absolutely. Debbie and I have both been on their polar bear trip. I did their monarch migration trip in Mexico, which if anybody's ever interested or knows anybody, that is an amazing program that is way under known. And the Browns have also been on the whale shark.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
That's right.
on the whale shark diving trip, and so they have just an amazing array of things. So I'll turn it over to Don.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be down here. I was just talking to Debbie, and I think it was about 6 years ago that Lisa and I came down, and for the very first time we went to Sliders and had a nice group of about 20 or so folks, and you know, none of us, Angie's thinking outside the box to bring companies that aren't, you know, they don't have the iconic name. So we're eternally grateful to Angie and all of Wallace Pearson for bringing what we think are wonderful products to their clients. So again, as Angie said, we do have a lot of product all over the world. So from the Galapagos to Borneo, from Greenland down to Antarctica, we have about 100 different itineraries on 46 countries in all 7 continents, and that's pretty much the same with Lindblad. By and large, the biggest difference, we're so similar in many areas that we've actually joined forces. We're partners with Lindblad now officially, but most of our product is land-based, most of their product is ship-based, so that's kind of, but you kind of have the same ethos. I want to just touch on something that Angie said, and I never would have done this, but right here in Mexico, 2 trips that you just don't hear about that much, and they're hyper-focused on one animal or one organism, and it happens to be the smallest focus of all of our trips, the monarch butterfly, 300 million monarch butterflies wintering, taking time out of where they are in the United States and Canada and going down and overwintering in trees to where you literally see branches of trees weighed down by the weight of millions of butterflies. And in that same country, we have the largest organism that we focus on, the whale sharks, which you all saw in the Yucatan Peninsula. So I'm glad you brought that up because it shows you how one little region is, and they're not, you know, they're not the polar bears, they're not the African safari, they're not the grizzly bears of Alaska, they're just things that you don't think of. So Angie's always good about saying, you know, we need to present what's not as recognizable in wildlife. So all of these trips have come about in 32 years of being in the business, still under the same gentleman that founded the company when he's 22 years old. So we're pretty proud of what we have. And we are the official partner to the World Wildlife Fund. And the panda bear is not just up there because it's the symbol, but this little guy made a move in the right direction in October, moved off the endangered list and moved to vulnerable. How great is that? Because so often you hear of animals going the other way, where they're threatened and then they're endangered and then they're extinct. So a little round of applause for the official symbol of our partner, World Wildlife Fund. Now, the other thing I want to mention about that is the partnership is more than just we bringing them members and they bringing us travelers. All of our expedition leaders, like Kevin Taylor, who was one of the scientists that reintroduced the wolves to Yellowstone 22 years ago, every one of our expedition leaders has real-time access to the research and information that's going on. So it could be something about monarch butterflies, it could be something about, you know, pink dolphins in the Amazon, or it could be about big super species, elephants and lions and so on and so forth. There is inevitably research going on about that wildlife, and with our partnership, our guides that are already vetted and brought to us by their experience and their education can add more to their guiding. So that's a key part of what we do. Tudo Motalesi is a South African guide that predominantly does Botswana. He was my guide there 4 years ago. He was named one of Outside Magazine's top 10 guides of the world. not African safari guides, not wildlife guides, guides. So this included cycling guides, ski guides, river rafting guides, all guides that Outside Magazine that represent active trips, and he came in the top 10. Notice that camera. He's not just an amazing guide because of his knowledge on wildlife, but he's also a photo expert. So we have a whole line of photography trips where the guides have the duality of knowing not just about the digestive tract of an elephant or the breeding habits of African wild dogs, but they can talk intelligently about shutter speeds and f-stops. And this is a picture from one of our guides, okay? This is called Marshmallow Aurora. Taken 2 months ago in Churchill, where Angie and Debbie and Nancy have all been up to see the polar bears, but we go back there when the bears are long gone, and we take groups of travelers out to capture the magical northern lights. It's bitter cold, and the skies are almost ever so clear, so you go out at night. I mean, that's taken at night, you can see the stars, but I love that. So that's some of the opportunity you have with our photo tours.
Tell them how comfortable they are up there while they're looking at this.
Oh, I will get to that in a minute. Thank you. You're jumping ahead, my dear. So the third part of our, the second part of our recipe of success, we got great leaders and small groups of travelers. And I know Kat and Darnell, right? They asked about, well, are your groups going to change? Are you going to get? No, we're going to stick to what we've been doing for 32 years. 10 is our average group size. And if we take a single deposit, we guarantee to run the trip. So now you're going to be with an intimate group. A lot of people have aversion to traveling with groups because they're like, what if I'm not going to? You think about, if you like nature and wildlife, you're probably going to be in good company if you're traveling with us. And we really qualify our travelers because it's not about the thread count, it's about what counts. So remember, small group size. And an example of what that means is Leo in the very back with that wonderful smile, half shade, half sun. He's one of our 12 or 15 year old, he's older than that. He's been with us for 12 or 15 years, Costa Rican guides. And what he can do is, like, we're going to get out of the vehicle and we're going to take a short little walk, you know, maybe a half a mile up this hill in the Monteverde cloud forest. Well, then he's taken his driver guide to come up a road on the backside and set up a little picnic table. Those kind of impromptu things can happen a lot more organically and a lot easier when your group size is limited to 10 on average. In Africa, our group size is around 6. So again, keeping to that. Even in the Galapagos, one of our more active trips, we have a 14-passenger sailing catamaran. We put 2 expedition leaders. That's the George Clooney of Ecuador. He really is. He's amazing. I mean, everybody comes back like, is Roberto married? Funnily, the men and the women both. But with 2 expedition leaders on a 14-passenger catamaran, 7 to 1 when you're doing your short excursions. And the other thing in the Galapagos, moving into secluded accommodations, we're the only company that allows overnight camping in the highlands of Santa Cruz. So we actually get off the ship and we stay in these tree houses or African-style tented camps, and we wake up to dozens of tortoises there. Or we have, and now it's not always tented camps, I'll show you more, but what we did in this pristine national forest in southern Utah is we set up comfortable, what we call glamping, glamour camping. So you have proper beds, you're not sleeping on the ground. We have a bed with memory foam on it, and we give you hot water bottles, and there's solar lights in there, and we even have a little chemical toilet in the back, so it's leave no trace behind. But this is 15 minutes from that. North rim of the Grand Canyon. So you can stay in a lodge and you can see dozens and dozens of folks in your lodge and going out, or you can stay in a campsite completely secluded from everyone and come back after a night or a day of excursions in either Bryce or the North Rim and have your own little private tented area. This is Halo Camp in the Okavanga Delta, which might as well be the Ritz-Carlton, because when you're done with the game drive in the morning and you come back and you have this wonderful breakfast, you can sit and wait for your evening game drive. Oftentimes there's a little plunge pool, there's an indoor-outdoor plum shower, flush toilets, everything you would imagine in a 5-star hotel, but you are literally completely immersed in nature. So that, again, is what we do. We're always going to choose our accommodations based on proximity to wildlife. The catalogs that you have on your table, there's a theme that we don't publish a catalog just to show you where we go and when we go. There's always a theme, and this year's theme is Innovations in Nature Travel. So we add new trips a lot of the times, but we also take trips that we've been running for decades and continually improve them. And that's why we want to say Innovations in Nature Travel, not just our trips, but how we can serve the planet better. And one of the things we did was the first carbon neutral travel company. And if you want to get into the details of how that works, I'm happy to talk about it later. An innovation, we took this ship, which used to be the Time Bandit in the world's deadliest catch, and we converted it into a comfortable vessel that only takes 8 travelers. We started in Kodiak Island, where we have 2 overnights where we do some whale watching, visit the otters and the puffins, and then we jump on a float plane and fly across the Shelikof Strait to one of the most rugged, remote areas of Alaska, the Katmai Coast, Hallow Bay, Kuko Bay. We go out with hip waders, and we are here to see the largest coastal grizzlies in the world, moms and cubs, and occasionally wolves that'll scamper after the bears. And we are literally not away from them with any kind of deck platform or on a ship. We are from here to where you are. The reason we're able to do that safely is these bears have never been hunted or predated, so they're oblivious to us in terms of being a threat. And there just happens to be a plentiful supply of salmon this big that keeps them busy. Now, I really want to get into a trip that we have been doing for 29 years, and it's taken a lot of innovations to make it just the way it is, the Churchill Polar Bear Program that 3 in this room, 4 if you include me, have done. And it's in Churchill, which is on the banks of the Hudson Bay. And I'm sorry, 5 of us now. We've got, wow, we're in good company. This is the Tundra Lodge, which is one option, again, going back to secluded accommodations. Most people will stay in a modest hotel, motel in the town of Churchill, but we do offer a Tundra Lodge trip where we have a bunch of double wides that are put on giant wheels and hauled out to the banks of the Hudson Bay, where we're right in the migratory path of the bears as they're working their way out to the Hudson Bay. And this is in October and November. You can see we've made it very comfy but simple, a little gas fireplace, a dining area, a den area. But when you're not hanging out on the Tundra Lodge, you're out in our Polar Rovers, state-of-the-art vehicles. Everybody gets a window seat because we only put 16 people on a rover that holds 32. We've extended a back area where you can say hello to the bears very close, literally come face to face. And here's where innovation really comes so true. This platform years ago was sheet metal, just you couldn't see underneath it. One of our guides said, and again, we don't own these vehicles, we hire them from Churchill. A part of ecotourism is making sure you keep a lot of the revenue locally. So the company owns the rovers, but we took our own money and we did an investment in nature travel, or innovation in nature. And we removed the sheet metal and replaced it with graded metal, so you can actually, if you want, get down on your hands and knees and come nose to nose with the polar bear. The pictures are great, aren't they? The video is even better, so enjoy this little few-minute snippet of what the whole experience is. And I know it's going to bring flood memories with all of you that have been there.
We're in Churchill, Manitoba on the coast of Hudson Bay. It's snowing in October, but we're all here to see some polar bears. To be able to see polar bears in the wild like this is something I never imagined, and it's not something we might be able to do 20 years from now.
I've wanted to be here for years, so I'm glad that before I'm too old, I'm able to get to see one, at least one.
Good morning, Churchill. It's -5 outside and the wind is blowing strong from the northwest. And it's time to go out on the tundra and find those great big polar bears.
Remember when I first saw a polar bear for the first time. I mean, it was just such an emotional experience, and I love to see people get excited like that. It's my favorite part of the job.
Yeah, the polar bear right below us. Right? I mean, literally, he was like sniffing up at us.
I have almost tears in my eyes. It's even difficult to say it in my language, so then to say it in English. It's unbelievable.
For years and years, I wanted to come here, and I'd fold down the pages in the catalogs about the trip for like 10 years, and then finally did. And on the plane, the flight attendant probably thought I was nuts because I had a tear coming down when we landed, you know. And now just seeing my first polar bear, tears all over again.
This tiny tooth here is a premolar, and it's vestigial, meaning they don't really use it. It doesn't do anything. It's just kind of maybe left over from their ancestors. Polar bears are facing a tremendous number of threats, and it's going to be a long shot for us to keep them alive. The climate's warming, and it's our fault. It's happening too fast for the polar bears to adapt.
Natural Habitat Adventures, one of our priorities as a company is to continue to raise the bar on conservation across the industry. Cutting edge information technology, research that's being done on animals like polar bears to help further conservation into the future.
So our work on climate change and species involves looking at the vulnerability of a species and then developing interventions based on the vulnerabilities that we identify. The biggest thing with the polar bear is habitat specialization. It's an ice specialist and it's just losing its habitat. So Arctic sea ice is declining at a rate of probably around 5% per decade. Increasingly, we're seeing more and more bears spending more time on land for longer than they used to. And that obviously results in human-wildlife conflict. By creating a value for that wildlife, it's an incentive for the communities to help conserve that wildlife as well.
Polar bears are such charismatic animals. They're easy to fall in love with, and they're easy to get attention from people. Polar bears are an umbrella species. So if we keep the polar bears, everything else in the ecosystem, all the birds, all the way down to the plankton level, will be okay.
I think ecotourism is invaluable. By bringing tourism to the region, done in a sustainable way, of course, the communities actually really start to see the benefits.
I think this is the perfect place for people to really build a connection with bears. And you see them up close, learn about them, and get an appreciation and a love for them. So when they go home, they can be ambassadors for the bears to the rest of the world.
I think it's worth people seeing this and understanding the Arctic a little bit.
It changes you, I think, when you have certain kinds of experience in nature. For the better. You grow.
The people that come to visit take a little piece of this place home with them. And when you take a piece of something like this home with you in your heart, you're more likely to make choices to benefit those things, even if it's very far away.
So that's all you need to know about polar bears, and it really is, I mean, any one of us that's been there. Yes, Charlie?
Two quick thoughts. Churchill was really neat too. If you haven't, you know, this is about the bears, but in Churchill at night we went curling, which was really cool, particularly when you fall on your butt, because it's just more difficult than you thought. the bears come into town, and then they get put in jail, and then the helicopters take them back out. So we saw all of that too. It's an incredible adventure with them.
And segued right into what I was going to talk about. So again, we go back to Churchill for Northern Lights, and when you're up there for polar bears, you're doing all the watching and all the activities that revolve around nature during the day, and then we do curling and we do presentations with some of the local Inuit at night. Flip that around, go back up in January, the bears are long gone. All of the activities like curling and dog sledding are during the day, and at night we have added as Angie asked, an aurora pod. Because what we used to do is take you out and bundle you up and, you know, just kind of tough it out so you could see the lights. And we're like, well, you know, there are some places in Churchill, but we wanted to get away from the light pollution. So we built an aurora pod, or our company that has the polar rovers helped us build this. You can see it's got a little chimney there, so it's heated. And you sit in a cozy armchair with a glass of wine, beer, a hot toddy, or hot chocolate. And our guides they help you set up your cameras on a tripod. So you sit in the comfort, and it's like a dome car of a train. And you sit there and watch the magnificent Northern Lights dancing while your camera's doing the work, because it does require some special settings on your aperture and your timer. The last innovation, and it's something dear to my heart because I just came back from my second trip to Greenland, but it starts and ends in one of my favorite cities in the world, Reykjavik. There are 18 gateway cities in North America that all land in Reykjavik in the morning, and we have dinner that night and a little excursion around town, and the next morning we take a fixed-wing aircraft an hour and 15 minutes from Reykjavik, and then we take a helicopter ride onto Tsilak, which is an Inuit village of 1,000 people on Amasilak Island in eastern Greenland. Eastern Greenland is one of the last undiscovered wilderness of the world. The other two are the backside of Antarctica and the Siberian coast of the Arctic Sea, of the Arctic Ocean. Eastern Greenland, if you look at the map of Greenland from the top to the bottom, is the same distance from Tromsø, Norway to Naples, Italy. It's an amazing, and there are 2,000 people that live there. 2,000 people. So what we did is we thought, well, we don't want to stay in tents, and there's only one moderate hotel where we spend 2 nights when we first get to Greenland. We built, again, this isn't glamping, these are cabins, tented cabins. We have a whole fleet of kayaks, and inside we have a couple beds, a heater, a chemical toilet, a wash basin, and if you look back here at the first, that long tent, we have 2 of those, a dining tent, and then we have a segregated hot shower tent, segregated, of course. We don't want to condone the showering together. Come on. We're in nature, but not that much. And we even added a common area called the Explorer's Corner Yurt, where you can, when you're not doing your activities and everything, it's active, but option. If you say, I don't want to kayak today, I'm going to sit and have a drink. And we will pour a glass of single malt scotch and take glacial ice and chop it up and put it in that. I'm not kidding you, we do that. It's one of the things I love is someone will go out in the sea and grab a big block of ice, rinse the salt off, and then chop it up, and that ice is you'll never get purer ice in the world.
Hey Don.
Yes, ma'am.
How long does it take a piece of glacial ice to melt in a drink?
Depends how warm your breath is while you're drinking. And a function of how cold your hands are too that's holding it. It's all
mathematical equation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll write down the equation later. So this is a shorter video, and this doesn't have narration. Enjoy the music and enjoy the staggeringly beautiful. Thank you. And wonder, we've had an opportunity to look into the world of NatHab, but we also always want to take into consideration what this little Inuit girl is looking through her window to see what we're doing, and that's a big part of what both NatHab and Lindblad do. It's not that we're coming to see their world or this world. We're always taking into consideration is how are we viewed. So I really like putting that as a final. So I'm going to turn it over to Miss Lisa Bain, my good friend. Are there any quick questions? Because we're here for a while.
Okay, we're good to go. Right, thank you. My name's Lisa Bain with Lindblad Expeditions. And I think tonight what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a little video that kind of gives you a hint of where we go and what we do, just to give you a feel of what Lindblad is.
Why you travel halfway across the globe. This is what you come to see in the hopes that it'll always be here.
This is more than ever could expect. You can't get any closer than this.
It is pretty much beyond words, so worth it.
This is absolutely sensory overload.
Totally overwhelmed.
It's as if the crew here that has cued the bears or cued the whales.
They came right up to our ship.
It's the trip of a lifetime.
The next 2 hours, we were just in and amongst these dolphins. I don't think I'll ever stop talking about this day for the rest of my life.
This particular minke whale came to our zodiac, and the whale just continuously circled us.
We got to watch the birth of a new little sea lion. To see this in real life is unbelievable.
It's the pictures that we see in National Geographic that all of a sudden we're watching with our own eyes.
Is not a good day with expedition travel is when we go totally off script. Okay, those are the special moments. Those are the days that are really spectacular. So I want to go back about 51 years because we actually were founded by a gentleman by the name of Lars Erik Lindblad back in 1966. And he was an explorer in his own right. And Lars was out there and he was going to these amazing places around the planet. And he very quickly realized that these places were already disappearing. And he wanted to make sure they had a voice so that they could be protected. So the whole reason he started Lindblad Expeditions was to ensure that we could take people out and educate them and impassion them and share with them these amazing places, and they would come back as a voice for their preservation. And so that's the same reason we go everywhere we go today as it was back in 1966. And his very first trip, the very first trip of any company to Antarctica back then, he put an ad in the New York Times on a little red ship and said, I'm going to Antarctica, and ladies, 62% of the people on that trip were women. Now think of that for the time. Pretty amazing that with the ladies that put their hand up and said, oh yeah, I'm going to go to the end of the planet with you. I think that's pretty cool. So the following year, he took the very first trip to Galapagos, and then we just grew from there. So his son, Sven Lindblad, has been at the helm of the company now for 30 years. And he has really grown us from that one little ship in Antarctica to now 15 ships at the end of next year. He's also invested in a lot of technology, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But he has also created some pretty cool alliances. And the one you're going to know best is our alliance with the National Geographic Society. And the society is the non-profit, right? They've been around for 126 years this year. Their job was to send scientists into the field so they could do research. They come back and write those fantastic white papers that then became the magazine, the National Geographic magazine, that none of us can throw away, right? We've all got stacks of that wonderful yellow rectangle in our house somewhere. Hint, it comes on a DVD set now that's about this big. So you can get rid of all the magazines as long as you recycle them. And so about 14 years ago, Sven was sitting, and he'd always been a huge fan of the National Geographic, and he realized our ships were going to these amazing places around the planet, and their scientists were going there too. And so they were using their funds to transport their folks. Well, that didn't make any sense to him. So he got together with the then head of the National Geographic Society, Gil Grosvenor, and said, we can create a relationship here that allows your scientists to travel on our ships, do their research, share it with our clients so they learn, and then you're not spending the money there, you're spending it on the research, the important part. And so that relationship has just been re-upped until 2025. So we're really excited to be working with the National Geographic Society. And that's why their name is on our ships. Lindblad owns and operates all the ships, but we have their name on our ships as well. And then we have an amazing expeditionary team. So these are the men and women that you travel with. These are marine biologists, cultural specialists, naturalists, ethnomusicologists. We actually have a culinary naturalist. They're men and women who are specifically focused on that region. And they want to share it, they want you to understand it so that you'll come back and care for it and be as passionate about it as they are. Education is also a huge part of what we do. We do a lot of multi-generational families around the world, from Galapagos and even Antarctica. We have young travelers with us. And they're really important to us because they're that next generation, right? They're the folks that are going to be out there protecting these amazing places. So we want to make sure that our team is prepared and have the skills to help them understand the places we're in. And so we work with the National Geographic Society, and we have our Global Explorers program on our ships, and that's being reintroduced again this year in the Galapagos as well. So I hinted about technology. So the big difference for Lindblad is we believe if you're on a ship, 50% of what you want to see is underneath that ship in that marine environment. And if you miss that because you're just looking at what's above the waves, you've missed a huge opportunity. I was actually in Galapagos, and one of our expedition leaders, I think he put it into words absolutely beautifully. He said, so do we have any vegetarians on board tonight? And a few hands go up, and he goes, so did you go snorkeling? Yep. Did you have a good time? Yep. Did you swallow any seawater? Yep. You are not a vegetarian. Because when you take a thimble of water and put it under our video microscopes, you realize you are sitting on a huge living organism. And to understand that, and then to have access to that through our ROVs, our remote operated vehicles that can go 1,000 feet down and beam back footage from the ocean floor, to have underwater divers in places like Antarctica that are videoing all of that amazing marine life. People think Antarctica is going to be barren. It's not. The colours of the starfish and the bottom of the ocean is absolutely spectacular. And when you look at an iceberg, that bottom 70 to 80% looks like the surface of a golf ball. Hundreds of little circles. And it's just absolutely gorgeous to see. So to open up that whole world makes a huge difference. We also have all this great equipment like our kayaks, our paddle boards, our Zodiacs, because these are the fleet of Zodiacs that get you into those places that big ships cannot get to. Basically, if they're selling tchotchkes and there's electricity, we're going to avoid it like the plague. Okay? That's not what we want. If there are other folks that can go there, we want to show you those places that are off the beaten path. There we go. So one of the other big things for us is our open bridge policy. If you're on a ship, this is the best seat in the house. To be up with the captain at all hours of the night and day, to be able to sit there. Our new ships that we're actually building right now have banquet seating and coffee. So you can be up there as long as you want with the captain and learn about what it's like. And I can tell you from experience, the best time to be up here is late at night when the main lights are off. You've just got that green glow from all of the maps and the equipment, and you're up there with the captain or the first mate, and you are learning what it's like to traverse these amazing oceans. And so to share that with our clients is a big part of the experience of being on an expedition. Our photography component. This is called the Yes, I'll Slopper on Your Lens shot. This is Flip Nicklin. Photography for us is a huge part of all of our expeditions. So on every trip, there will be a certified Lindblad Nat Geo photographer. And then on our two flagships, the Orion and the Explorer, we have a National Geographic photographer in residence. That means they've been featured in the publications of the National Geographic. And their whole job is to help you get the best photography of your life. Be it from a cell phone to a $20,000 camera, the reason they're there is to help you get, okay, they'll stand behind you and say, now get down, take it from this angle, look at your white balance, let's work on this. And they'll give you all these great hints on how to get the best photography of your life. And we do this on small ships. Our biggest ship is 148 guests. That's our biggest ship. Our smallest is 28 guests, and she goes to the Amazon. And so, you know, that's it, 28 to 148 guests. This is intimate experiences, everything from penguins to polar bears, and pretty much everything in between. And one of the beautiful things about the way we travel is that not only is it multi-generational families, couples, but we have a lot of solo guests that travel with us. And to be a solo guest with us is to be part of the community. So what I find is that, and I usually travel as a solo on our ships, you get on board and you think, oh my gosh, I don't know anybody. And everyone else on the ship is there to get to know everybody else. And honestly, by about day 3, you're like, gee, I just love a few minutes on my own somewhere. I just picked up and carried along with the excitement. People don't sit together at dinner. You'll find families will even split up because the person sitting across from the table from you may be just as interesting as the destination. And so you want to get to know everybody. So it doesn't matter if you're a solo, a couple, a family, a large multi-generational, you get caught up in that community that is expedition travel. So I want to talk about a couple of places that are really exciting that we're doing with Wallace Pearson this year. Then I'll kind of go off into the other places we go. We're actually doing a group with Angie to Cuba. And we go to Cuba in a little bit of a different way. So we actually, on February 14th of next year, we'll be traveling with Angie on the Harmony 5, which is a mega yacht. So I'm going to make sure that we set our expectations. This is a mega yacht located in Cuba. Okay? She is a beautiful ship. She has lovely amenities. But always, and this is why you want to go to Cuba now, right? You don't want to wait until it's all Four Seasons and Ritz and it loses that cultural integrity. You want to travel to Cuba while it's Cuba. And so what we want to bring to life down there is the opportunity to fly down into Havana, do those people-to-people experiences, but then get across the country onto a small, intimate ship, only 48 guests, and explore not only the cultural components, but the marine components and the wildlife sustainability that is happening down in Cuba as well. And Sven actually was just down there recently and did this entire trip, and there's an amazing place here called the Garden of the Queens, which is some of the most pristine diving in the world on the Garden of the Queens. So this will be from Miami down to Havana. We'll all go to Miami together, get on the plane, go down to Havana. We'll be staying in the Hotel Nacional in the executive level. And that's where we're going to spend time and really delve into Havana life. We'll head across to the Cienfuegos aboard the ship, Bay of Pigs, Key Largo, Trinidad, Garden of Queens. Now this is always fun. Bay of Pigs. The Cubans are a little bit concerned when you approach from the water. So we actually do go back to Cienfuegos that day and go by bus to Bay of Pigs, just to make sure that they feel comfortable and not threatened in any way by a 48 guest passenger vessel. So, but just to give you a feel, so we arrive in Havana, and the Hotel Nacional, this is where that whole, you know, the Rat Pack, all of the famous folks used to stay when Cuba was at its heyday. This is all about music and cigars and getting out and really understanding the food and the feel of this destination. And we actually have an ethnomusicologist that helps us put our musical components together. And an ethnomusicologist is someone who draws on the roots and the history and the culture of music in a place. So that's a lot of fun. And then when we head across to Cienfuegos, we're going to be talking to a lot of their marine biologists, a lot of their sustainability experts on how they're helping to maintain the green sea turtle populations. So it's a much deeper opportunity to tour in Cuba. Our other trip with Wallace Pearson next year is a really exciting one because this is the whole Wallace Pearson family. This is going to be heading to the South Pacific, and we have a beautiful ship which is only 100 guests, the National Geographic Orion, which we've had some fun with in the past. And she is going to offer 5 different itineraries in the Pacific. And this is going to include snorkeling and diving and cultural components with that full expeditionary team on board. This is her, 102 guests, and with balcony suites as well. So we're going to fly from Los Angeles down into the South Pacific, which is about an 8-hour flight from Los Angeles, so not too bad. And this includes free air from LA, return at the moment. So that's something to take advantage of. And these 5 itineraries are really going to focus on different areas from Tahiti, the Marquesas Islands, Fiji, and the Southern Line Islands. So each of those is a little different in what they offer, but the trip we're focused on is beyond the postcard. So the cool thing here is we'll fly into Papeete, we'll go out into Bora Bora, where we'll actually go into the interior of the island in 4-wheel drives with our archaeologists and our historians and learn about the history of the region. And then also in Taha, you've got Tapatapatea, or Maria Tapatapatea, and that's where the Polynesians set off to go and explore for Rapa Nui and New Zealand and also for Hawaii. So there's a lot of amazing history through this area. Then we're going to head across into Whakarava, and yes, that's how it's said. And this is an area, this is the largest Whakarava is the largest island of 80 little islands that are all scattered through here, all with spectacular snorkeling and diving before we go into Rangiroa, which is the second largest atoll with some spectacular snorkeling again. So we'll be in our kayaks out in the Zodiacs, you'll be hiking, you will be with our naturalists and our National Geographic photographers. So it's quite a special trip, and that's July 19th next year. So if you want more information, I know Angela is working on that now, and we have some cabins on hold for that particular itinerary. So let's now just quickly chat on some of the other places we go. Has anyone been to Antarctica? Awesome. So this is
everywhere, y'all.
Antarctica is a pretty amazing place. We do 2 different trips down there. We do a 14 or a 24 days. So the Antarctica 14 days is to the peninsula. The 24 days, the peninsula, South Georgia, and the Falklands. So it gives you all of that amazing wildlife on South Georgia, which is really the Serengeti of the Southern Ocean. What I will tell you about going to Antarctica, people will always say, what about the Drake Passage? How rough is the Drake Passage? It can be a little bumpy. It can be flat. I was in there in November, and it was like this on the way down, and I actually had guests coming to me complaining because it was too flat, and it was like, but let me explain why doing the Drake Passage is such an intrinsic part of doing Antarctica. When you step off from the Beagle Channel and you turn that corner and you know that there is nothing between you and the end of the planet, when you look out the back of the ship and all you see are albatross and bird life, and everyone is out there trying to get that perfect photo, it looks like a Tai Chi class because everyone's moving with the waves. When you see that very first chunk of ice, tiny little chunk of ice, and everyone gets so excited because, oh my gosh, we've just seen a bergie bit, because there's bergie bits, growlers, and icebergs. And a bergie bit's about the size of this table, and then a growler is the size of this building, and then, an iceberg is the size of Manhattan. I mean, they're huge, and you're seeing only 20 to 30% above the water. We had a little competition on board. It was like a free bottle of wine, and here, ladies, this is where this gets insane. Wine and gratuities are included. Okay, so there's a free bottle of wine for the first. It gets better. There's a free bottle of wine for the first person who sees that first iceberg. And we're sitting at dinner, beautiful dinner. You saw the dining room. We're all having wine. We're talking about how excited we are and how lucky we are because it's so flat. And this little chunk of ice goes by. I mean, the thing could have fit in a cooler. It was the smallest. It was the smallest piece of ice I've ever seen. And every man in the room dived out of their seats because you had to be the first person to the captain. And they ran over top of each other to get to the bridge to get this free bottle of wine on the ship that includes wine and gratuities. Such is the excitement of the first iceberg. But that is what it's about. And then, within 4 or 5 hours, you're seeing things the size of a building. And every one of them is different, and it reflects the light, and they're just spectacular. And then you're seeing these huge bergs that are the size of Manhattan, and there's 14, 15 of them in a row. I mean, and then you see the peninsula, and all of a sudden the wildlife comes into view. And so I think to miss that building of excitement as you cross, to feel like an explorer as you approach, takes away from that amazing experience of being out there with the wildness of Antarctica. Being amongst porpoising penguins, walking amongst gentoos, chin straps, being surrounded by elephant seals, having amazing wildlife around you like whales, minke whales, killer whale pods. We got to see an emperor penguin. A lot of people think you're going to see emperors all the time you're down there. You don't. Emperors breed in the winter. We don't want to be there in the winter. We're there November through February, right, when it's summer. But to see one of them on the ice when they're out hunting is really quite special. And so for us, it's about sharing a destination we've been going to for 51 years. So if you want some more information, please ask me, because it is one of the most epic trips I've ever done. We've also been up in the Arctic for about 35 years. So we do Norway, we go up to Svalbard. So this is a little different of a polar bear experience. We actually go up into Svalbard. It's in the Arctic Circle. It's a small archipelago. And this is where we'll come across the mothers and their cubs, the big males will be out in the ice on the ship. And they will actually come up and put their paws up on our ship and look up at us as we're standing over the railing. But we're also out hiking. We're seeing Arctic fox, Arctic hare, amazing bird life. And so this is more than just the polar bear, it is experiencing Svalbard and the history of the region as well. It was actually a mining area that was settled by Americans. Then we come down the east coast of Greenland, and then we head into Iceland, and we do several circumnavigations of Iceland. And this is the sexiest place on earth if you're a geologist. Because if you love sulfur pits and boiling mud and volcanoes and tectonic plate movement and all that stuff, this is just like, you get the shivers every time you get off the ship. So we are spending our time, once we come into Reykjavik, we do Reykjavik for a couple of days because it is a beautiful city, but then we head up to Flatey Island, which is where Eric the Red set off, back to Greenland. We then go up to Istafjorda. We head away all the way around to Grimsey Island, then down around on the east coast. And so you're really seeing the places that are extremely hard to get to, and Iceland as it should be seen with the locals. So if you're looking at Iceland, that's a really cool one. We do a trip that actually comes across from Bergen through the Faroes and the Orkneys, and that's where we have our culinary naturalist. And he's a young man by the name of Francis Lamb. Does anyone watch or listen to the radio program The Splendid Table on National Public Radio? You should, it's fantastic if you love food on a Sunday. But Lynn Rosetta Casper's retiring, and this young gentleman, Francis Lamb, who is our culinary naturalist, will actually be leading our guests foraging on the islands of the Faroes and the Orkneys to learn what it was like to find those herbs and vegetables that they would have used 200-300 years ago. So the Galapagos Islands, it's our 50th anniversary in the Galapagos this year. Lars Erik was the very first person to take guests there. He actually paid out of his own pocket the wages of the first 2 national park guides, because at that point the Ecuadorian government did not have the funds to do so. And so for us, it's a source of pride that we have been there and supported this amazing region for so long, and have been a part of its growth. And also we've put $7.5 million into the removal of non-endemic species. And that's important. And here's why Galapagos is perfect for families. This is one of those amazing places where you can say to children, this is an example of when we've done the right thing. Because if you went to Galapagos 30 or 40 years ago, today it's in much better shape than it was then, with goats and wild pigs and overrun by non-endemic species. So now is a great time to see the Galapagos Islands, and we have a brand new ship we just launched there. So we have 2 ships year round, but it's about the giant tortoise, but 45% of the time you're going to be in the water. This is about snorkeling with penguins and green sea turtles, and over here is a marine iguana, and over here comes a flightless cormorant, and then a blue-footed booby is going to dive in over here next to you. The wildlife is absolutely amazing, and it is not scared of you in any way. It is very eager to come up and say hello. And these are the moments that happen all the time in the Galapagos on our ships. Ours are a little larger, and this is why it's nice with our relationship with Natural Habitat, because we have 96 guests and 48 guests, but these are platforms for exploration. So you have all that great underwater equipment, glass bottom Zodiacs if you don't want to be in the water all the time. But then we also have our partner at Natural Habitat that gives you those smaller ship options as well. So it's the perfect marriage of small and more expeditionary. And I threw the Amazon in here because this is a trip that if you've not been to the Amazon River, has anyone been or wanting to go to the Amazon? The Amazon is an amazing place. You should not go there because wildlife is your main focus. You should go there because you want to be on one of the world's great rivers, and you want to understand what it's like to be on a super highway of life, because that's what this river is about. It's about waking up in the morning and hearing the tuk 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 of the boats, and seeing children go to school on a dugout canoe, and someone else coming down here with bananas, and a sharecropper heading off to get his, go out into the jungle and work on his fields. That plus the wildlife, but it really is about a river that is alive from every moment of the day. So let's talk about Alaska. We do it a little differently. We have ships that are only 62 or 100 guests. So when we talk Alaska, we want to get you 300 feet from a calving glacier so you feel the spray in your face. We don't want you to be back with a pair of binoculars. We want you to be walking in the footsteps of the bear as you head up to where the spawning grounds are. We want you to be with the Alaska Whale Foundation, learning what the research is they're doing up there with the local Indigenous people. You know, we go to the Haida Gwaii, Queen Charlotte Islands, which is an amazing experience, UNESCO World Heritage Site. And this is where you get to see the totems. And very different experience, and we're the only company that's allowed in there with ships of 62 guests. And I'll always show you pictures of otters. And I'm going to put my American accent on. This is an otter. And otters have blubber.
Don't say how you normally
Because I usually say otters and blubber, and people are going to go, what with what? And people who know me know these are my favourite little animals, and they're renowned to be known as fuzzy chainsaws because they're not particularly friendly. But these are a species that you need to watch very carefully, because when the water is polluted, these are the guys that suffer first. Because they don't have blubber, they have to keep their fur extremely clean and very, aerated. And as soon as oil gets in the water and that fur gets matted, they're gone, because they get hypothermia very, very quickly. And so we're always working in all the places we go to help people understand how important it is to take care of the waterways, how important it is to take care of the wildlife in the places that we visit. We also do Baja, California. This is the grey whales, Magdalena Bay, where the mothers give birth, and they will actually push their babies up to the surface to interact with us. Think about that. These are species that have nearly been hunted to extinction. And they are still prepared to take their young and push them up and basically say, look, this is pretty special. Understand what we're doing here. And so to be able to share that with guests, particularly younger guests, is wonderful. But we also do the Sea of Cortez, and that's huge megapods of dolphins and snorkeling and bird life. And then we head down the coast of Costa Rica to Panama. And that's in these wonderful little secluded areas along the national park. But what's really cool here is when we go through the Panama Canal, we stay on the ship on Gatun Lake overnight, and you are the only people that have private access to the Smithsonian Research Center. And so you get up the next morning and you spend time with the researchers and the scientists learning about what's being done in the forests of South America. And so that's Lindblad. That's where we go. This is the community of people we travel with. And our main goal is to take you to places that others cannot, to share the experiences, and to hope that you'll return as impassioned for these places as we are and help us protect them. So thank you.
Thank you.